Ready to go?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Hey guys, Tom here with another Around the World video vodcast thing. Today we're talking with France Touch Footy. So I've got a couple of gentlemen representing the French Touch Footy Club. If you guys want to introduce yourself, doesn't matter who goes first, just tell us a bit about you and a bit about you and your involvement with France Touch.
Julien, I'll let you go.
Rock, paper, scissors.
So I will start. My name is Julien Brebion. I'm the senior mixed coach for now 10 years. I coach for the senior mixed and I coached for under 18 girls team last year for Atlantic Touch Cup. I'm involved in the Touch France formation for coaching course.
Awesome.
Yeah, and my name's Tipple. I've done a fair bit of touch footy stuff back in Australia, and last year and this year I've been helping Touch France with coaching and development. We had the European Championships last year and the Atlantic Youth Championships, just like Julien said. And then this year I'm helping the high performance coaches in the lead up to the World Cup, going to training camps and tournaments in the lead up, and I'll be at the World Cup in the and also the European Championships, the Youth European Championships as well, which will happen in August in France. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, high performance director, is that or high performance? Was it high performance director?
My official title is Director of High Performance Coaching Development.
Okay, so is that a fancy term to get you as the coach for all the teams or help coach all the teams?
No.
Because a lot of people that I've spoke to about you, they're like, oh, he's got some fancy role, but they don't know what it actually is. Do you mind telling us what your job is, or if it's a secret, we don't have to go there?
No. It's no secret at all. I guess that just gives me a title that enables me to help Touch France wherever they see fit. So Julien is one of our technical leaders and writes a lot of coaching content. I went for a couple of nights and couple of days to his house last month, and we spent some time with some other Touch France administrators building out some coaching content. That was part of my role, and then also I've been to the junior coaching, training camps, and I've been to Women's Open and Men's Open. So essentially, wherever Touch France think that I can lend a hand and I can help the coaches however they see fit, then I can sort of just fit in there. So yeah, it's a long and fancy title to pretty much just say jack of all trades. Share your knowledge and experience and help where we see fit.
Well, yeah, I guess there's not really anything else we can call it, so it makes sense to call it Director of High Performance Coaching. I think that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you? We'll just stay on Mark and then. How did you get involved with France Touch? How did that happen?
That's a good question, Tom. A bit of fate and destiny aligned, I think. I like to attribute it to that quite a bit. But last year, I was actually coming to Spain. I was coming to Europe for a wedding, and I realised that I had a window of opportunity that I could actually stay overseas for an extended period. The Rugby World Cup was coming up. There was the Atlantic Youth Championships and the European Championships coming up in Touch. So through some contacts personally, and then also through FIT, I started sort of seeing what opportunities there might be to connect with an NTO. And to summarize it worked out the best with France. I got in touch with their general manager at the time, Cedric Huguet, who has become a really good friend, him and his family since then. And then things just really clicked. I went to their national finals, met Julien, and we did some coaching assessment at that stage. Just got on with everyone really well, and had a really good reception to some of the ideas in touch that I like to present, and some philosophies that I have. And so then it was just a good match. And so went to the tournaments last year, stayed in Europe or around Europe essentially for 4 months, went to tournaments, came back to Australia this recent summer, and then formalised what this year was going to look like with the World Cup coming up and things like that. So that's, yeah, bit of chance, a bit of luck and good timing. But yeah, that's how that came about.
Yeah, talk about good timing. Come back in the summer to Australia, win a state championship just casually, as you do with the men's open.
Yeah, I mean, massive blessing to be a part of that. And as you know, I think I put a message in the group because with everything that's going on with me, that's my that was my finishing point with the Central Coast men's team for now anyway. And yeah, I guess being a part of that journey over the past 10 to 15 years with Central Coast and seeing that club and seeing that team rise to where we've got to, it's pretty cool to be able to use some of those same principles around the world, and right now specifically with France, to say, yeah, okay, well, this is how we built from the ground up. This is what is working at the top level. And then I think when Julien and I have spoken about it quite a bit, not coming to France and saying, oh, this is how you have to do it, but suggesting ideas, giving some suggestions, and sharing philosophies, and then coaches like Julien and the Opens coaches adapting it to their team, how they see fit, what might work for their group of players, or what might work for the culture here or the way the sport's set up. So, yeah, I think, and you're probably experiencing that as well, Tom. I don't know if many people know, hopefully they start to, but you doing your work with China as well. The environments that we're lucky to be a part of in Australia and the education that we get is amazing in touch. And we've had a great head start in education in touch in Australia. But it's and it is cool to share your experience around the world, but you've got to be mindful of how you go about that as well to build connection, and being mindful that not every country has the same setup or the same culture that Australia does.
And that's you've hit the nail on the head there. And I sort of started to learn about it when I went to China first and experienced just a very different sort of culture. But then just doing these videos, talking with Sweden, how they say they can only play touch 3 months of the year. And I said, oh, is that because you play another sport? And they said, no, we physically can't get on the field. It's snow.
Yeah,
like it snows the majority of the year. Or Singapore, I spoke to them. They're so condensed in a small little area of 5 million people, they actually just really can't find field space. And and things like how when they do find field space, it's all artificial turf, and it's just things like that I just never knew. Never would even think about anything like that if I was just sort of in my own little shell in Australia, just playing touch footy the way I've always done it.
Which I think we do live in. I think we do live in our own little shell, in our own bubble in Australia for the most part, because the sport is pretty well sized that we can get caught up with, club rivalries and winning national champs and state cups. And I think that was the thing for me, assessing my career as a coach and a player. There's been a few stages where I've been like, oh, well, I could continue, trying to build certain things in Australia, but I'm pretty passionate about sharing our sport around the world, and seeing how much opportunity there is in there.
Yeah, and there's so much. There's so much, and I've found that the smaller nations, especially, they're really appreciative of any sort of help that they can get, whether it's from Australia, New Zealand, England, probably France is probably not too far off being a sort of a top tier nation as far as in international touch football. So I guess we just watch this space. So Julien, how's Mark do in his special role? Is it
He's really very good in his role.
Yeah, he's very good. So has he had? So does he have much to directly do with you and your senior mix side?
No, he didn't come with my senior mixed team, but he came with under 18 girls last year, and he just shared his experience. We need this kind of experience because in France we don't have this experience. We discovered this sport actually. This touch exists in France for only 20 years, so we need some experience about touch. We need to learn because we only learn thanks to videos. And when there is someone like Mark or Peter Walters who can come to France to share the experience, it's very precious for us because they bring their knowledge and we share this knowledge and we adapt it to French players. So it's very precious for us.
Yeah, awesome. So your senior mixed World Cup, are you a player as well, or are you just a coach?
No, I'm just a coach. I'm too old to play for senior mixed.
No one's too old to play for senior mixed. I wasn't judging. So tell us a bit about how training goes in France. We've spoken to different nations. Some of them, like Singapore, they train like twice a week, whereas other nations they get together maybe once a month. How does France work? You can talk about senior mixed, or you can talk if you know about other teams as well.
In France, actually, we have one training camp per month because the country is quite big. It's not easy to make training camps all weeks. So it's not easy to regroup all the players at the same place, but we managed to do it once per month. And I chose to make some tournaments with senior mixed team because I think we need to play under pressure and we need to find some tournaments to prepare the Touch World Cup. So it worked like that. We make some training camps and we make some tournaments.
And cool. Is this in this coming World Cup? I know, Mark, you've participated in. How many World Cups have you participated in? I know you played for Australia in Malaysia.
Yeah, just Malaysia for me. Julien's
just Malaysia?
Done at least two.
You've done two? Two previous?
I made the Touch World Cup in 2011 for mixed open team as a coach, an assistant coach, and after I was coach of a senior mixed and mixed open team in Malaysia.
In Malaysia. Oh, so you missed the mud pit that was 2015.
Yeah, it was too far away from me. It was in Australia, so yeah, I needed to work. Yeah.
Well, the photo, I still remember it. I was younger, but I was, a group of us were going to go and watch a game at Coffs Harbour. We were going to drive up and watch a day, but it just rained. It was just awful conditions. So probably a good one to miss out of all the World Cups. Well, that's cool. So so training once a month. Mark, how often do you try and get to France? I'm guessing you do sort of online coaching or satellite coaching.
Yeah, actually, when I was in Australia, I didn't do that much. I guess because it was sort of busy period in Australia and quiet time in France over our winter, relative quiet time. But I've been back in France for just over a month now, and then I'm doing an extended stay through to September. So once I'm here, then it's been much easier. I mean, as you know, Tom, and I guess with your role with China, you're one of the best to do online work because of the videos that you do with touchscreen, but it's still difficult. Like, there's nothing like being there face to face, talking things through, walking things through, and having all the little conversations and questions on the spot. I think as good as it is being on video these days, there's still nothing that replaces face to face. So credit to Julien, actually. I mean, in the past 10 years, he's sought out a lot of coaches from down under. I think we've had in France, Julien might be able to expand on this, but John Singh from South Queensland Sharks and the Gold Coast came before 2015. Julien had Danny Davis here around 2019 as well, and then Peter Walters as well. And it's been cool for me coming in. Pete and I both came pretty much at the same time last year, but seeing the development of Touch France over the past 4 to 5 years as well. Like I remember watching them at the last World Cup, and even the development since then, but also seeing, like I've said to Julien all the time, like there's coaches like him that are so hungry for knowledge and so humble to learn. And as coaches, we always have to be, if we're going to improve. We always have to keep our minds open to different ideas. And it's been cool seeing the influence of people like Danny, like for example, the pods, how we structure the lines or the pods for subbing in France. I asked Julien where that came from, and he said Danny Davis, and that is all throughout Touch France now. So it's cool seeing the effects of pretty wise people having the effect here, but also Julien being someone in France that's going out there and actively seeking help and experience from other people.
Yeah, that's really good. Well done, Julien.
Thank you.
How did you find? So I actually I've never met Danny Davis before. I've met Mackenzie, but never met Danny. I've seen her play a lot, and she's one of the superstars in the women's game. But I did meet Peter Walters. The last trip I took to China, Peter came to do. So I was with the mixed open, and Peter basically did anyone else who was interested. So a lot of that was the senior mixed side, and then anyone sort of that was willing to do it. And he is the nicest guy. He was so good. It was conditions were so hot, humid, and we were out there for 9 hours, and he just didn't stop. He was just on a mission. I think he's excellent what he does for international touch footy as well. So, but this is a question I'm sort of asking everyone. So, Julien, I'm looking at the senior mixed draw now. Oh, well, not the draw, but the pools on who you're playing against. You've got, how many is that? So you probably have eight games. Is there anyone that you're really interested in or excited to play against? Or
we are always excited playing against Australia because we're going to the Touch World Cup to play in Australia. Even if they are very strong, we would like to see what is our level against Australia. So maybe it's the games every player in France would like to play.
Yeah, that's it. Seems to be a pretty common answer. Australia. But I'm actually looking now, Cayman Islands. I didn't even know that they were. I need to look at the pools more. I didn't know that they even had touch football there at the Cayman Islands. So it's great to see them participating. Is there any teams that you've played before? Like, do you play England often at the Euro Champs or Wales or any teams like that?
Yeah, in last European Touch Championship, we played against England and Germany twice.
Okay.
Because there was a semi-final against Germany and the finals against England. They are a very good team. Germany is a team with a mix of a lot of Australian and Kiwis, and they are very strong. And it's not easy to play against them, but they're still friends because I have some players playing in Germany in the club. Mm-hmm. And England, it's always our enemy, and it's not easy to play against England because we always want to beat them, and they are so strong. So it's not really easy. So we're expecting this game too. Yeah.
So you're looking forward to playing Australia, but England and Germany are going to be some pretty entertaining games. There's going to be a lot of feeling in that.
Yeah, they are the three best players best team in Europe. So actually, there will be very good games, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know Cayman Touch. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's to be honest, I didn't either. But I'm interested to know more. about them, because everyone else I can sort of probably apart from maybe Chile, I have some knowledge that their touch footy exists in that country. So, but Mark, are you specifically at the World Cup? I know, like in the preparation, you're sort of helping out where you can. Are you specifically going to be with a certain team at the World Cup, or are you going to be floating with whoever needs you in the sort of same role?
My main role is to be with the Opens teams and to support the Opens coaches however they need, so men's, women's, and mixed. With those three programs, probably all of them are at slightly different stages and probably have slightly different goals as well, all aiming to make the quarterfinals. So, top four in their pool or whatever they need to do to make the quarterfinals. And I think, the men's program, for example, is going through a rebuilding phase. Over the last 2 years, they've had some good results. They're the last team to beat England, I think, full stop. They're the last men's team to beat England in a full international test match in 2022. And then they had a lot of senior players drop out gradually over the last 2 years. So it's almost a complete new team. So that's exciting for a lot of young guys in the men's open going. The women's open, it's somewhat of a rebuilding phase. Like, there's a lot of young girls under 20 that will go to their first World Cup. And I will say, in the three teams, and Julien will be able to give more information about this, but we're going through the first cycle of French touch players that have played since they were kids. Because the sport's been here for 20 years, we're now getting a lot of kids who grew up and their parents were some of the pioneers of the sport here, and they've been able to play from, sort of 10, 12, 14 onwards. And there's a lot of exciting talent that's coming through now. And this World Cup is the first time that these kids really are featuring on a big scale. So the women's team got a silver medal at the European Championships last year, and the core of that team returns and will be aiming for quarterfinals and beyond. And then the mixed team, it's really a really interesting program that Julien, the head coach there, has built since the last World Cup. And he's built a core group that also got their first ever silver medal last year, lost by 1 at the Euros against Wales. And they're building really well as well. And when you consider that at the 2019 World Cup, it was Scotland mixed open, the European champions, who won that bronze medal. There's European mixed teams really eyeing off that a medal place at this World Cup, including France. So all the programs are slightly at different stages. But yeah, it's pretty cool to be a part of it, and especially to see these young players get to play their first World Cup.
Yeah, that's heaps exciting, and it's like I guess you could call that a milestone with France Touch. It's sort of the peak of the mountain, and it's sort of, I guess you could say that with all the juniors coming through now, hopefully just kickstarts that cycle. So, Mark, is there any games that you're looking forward to? Any teams across any of those divisions that you're looking forward to coming up against?
Yeah, I'm looking at the mixed open. Well, I'll go through quickly all three. And in the pool D, the mixed open have England in their pool, and they've got other European rivals in Belgium and Switzerland. And both those teams have built really well as well. So, the game with England, like Julien said, is always a crunch match. There's a strong rivalry there. And
would you compare that to Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah, very similar in their own ways. The feeling is similar. Yeah.
No, that's
thankfully
good.
Australia and New Zealand don't have the history of war that France and England do. But yeah, I think that's as close as we get. to that kind of rivalry. So in the mix, yeah, that game with England would be crunch. The women, they have Australia in their pool, so they'll be excited to come up against them. And then they've got some really interesting matches against the likes of Singapore, Cook Islands, Japan, to try and get in that top fours. So a few interesting matches outside of the big one.
And you would have some probably knowledge about those three teams, with Japan playing at NTL, Singapore playing at State Cup, and Cook Islands being a large representation of sort of that Northern Beaches area. So I imagine that those three teams are going to be pretty strong from what we've seen so far. Japan surprised everyone at NTLs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Japan as well. They played at least one State Cup. I don't know if the girls got to both State Cups today, the Women's Open.
I don't think they were at. They
played Queensland and not New South Wales. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I can't tell for sure because I was involved with two teams and they made the 30s men's play 9-round games. So I was constantly back and forth. I didn't really get to watch anything until Sunday. So I couldn't tell you too much. It was just that Singapore Women's Open had a live stream game. So I went and rewatched that.
Yeah. And I mean, a massive investment for countries like Japan and England coming from Europe. But you started to see it pay off as their style of play improved and they adapted to the pace as time went on. And, you know, by the end of NTL, Japan was challenging some of the best women's teams in Australia. And 100%. Playing a really nice style. So, yeah, and Cook Islands, I think, is sleeping giants in all divisions. I don't think people know probably enough about them and the players that they're recruiting, but because the eligibility sort of opened up for this World Cup, they've named some really impressive teams that I think are going to get some shock results all around. So, yeah, Cook Islands will be really good. And then in the men's, once again, Australia and England feature in their pool. So all those young boys are very keen to challenge, you know, the likes of Hennessy and Pete Norman and all these guys they see on YouTube and test themselves against the best, like Julien said.
Interesting. So who, it's a random question, but do we know who got the bronze medal in the men's open at Malaysia?
Japan did.
Oh, Japan did. Okay, I thought England did. Okay, that makes sense why Japan and New Zealand are in the same pool and not. Okay, all good. Okay.
No, I went through it just not too long ago. I think the format was strange and it went straight to semi-finals. And Japan and England, I think it was Japan, England and PNG were all super close. Philippines were up there as well, but England had a draw with someone and that pretty much eliminated them on for and against. So I don't even know if they lost the game.
So quarterfinals is probably, I think that's probably a more fair sort of final structure. I think quarterfinals is what is needed because, you have a bad Wednesday and all of a sudden you can't make semis.
But then there's crunch matches like Julien, you would know more about this. You know, in your quarterfinal, you really want to end up avoiding Australia and New Zealand. So all your round matches end up being really important to get the placing, you know, so that you can kind of come second or third at least in your pool and get a nice quarterfinal, a nice quarterfinal matchup and get through to semis. So it's interesting how it works.
So something I'd like to, this is probably more of a question for Julien. I've been always asking some nations about if I was to move to France next week and I wanted to play touch footy or touch, I'm not sure if you call it touch rugby over there or touch football. If I wanted to play touch, what is the social scene like in France? Is it multiple associations that play? I know some nations have actually informed me they play pickup touch, and that is their whole social side of touch footy. How does it work in France?
In France, actually, we have several tournaments per weekend. We work as thanks to tournaments, but we have maybe during spring we have one tournament per week. We need to choose where we are going to play. So if you want to play this weekend, I think there is no tournament. But if you want to come in the beginning of June, there is one tournament next to Bordeaux in the west of France, and another tournament in the south of France next to Montpellier. So there are several tournaments around the France, and if you want to play, it's easy to find some tournaments, but the main problem is to move to these tournaments because it's far away from our clubs. In France, actually, you have a lot of clubs next to Grenoble in the southeast of France, and a lot of clubs next to Paris. And you have clubs all around France otherwise. So it's not easy to find a club where you want to play, even if you are in Grenoble or Paris.
So if I was to play in one of these tournaments, do I organise my own team, or am I playing for the club that I live near?
In France, you need to find a club where if you want to play. Mark wanted to bring this idea that if you are individual players, you can play in other team, but we don't have this idea yet. So maybe we will be able to do it if Mark he would like to make it in Marseille. I don't know if this idea is okay for him.
Well, it's just very different because to me that seems like representative touch, just a lot of it. It's just these tournaments that are on weekends. So anything that's on a weekend is normally associated with rep touch from where I'm from, and probably Mark would agree. Our social side is through the week, like at a nighttime after work, or for the kids it's after school. They play weekly, and it's just in a group of friends. They play at the club, but like I'm in a team now called the Boring Spuds, and it's just some guys that like a few of them that I played juniors with when now are all over 30. So we've sort of come back and put a team in. We won on Monday as well. It was really good.
Congrats, man.
Thanks. Big grand final rematch. It probably didn't have the feeling as France versus England, but there was some tough, dominant touches in that game. Have you dabbled, Mark, in some sort of social France touch footy when you've been helping out as director of high performing?
Yeah, and Julien mentioned that I have had conversations with him and Touch France about how we kind of increase social touch to see if we can implement it, to see if how we adapt it to the culture here. And that's the thing when you consider a lot of these things is you have to go to a place but understand when people finish work, what they do during weekdays, the culture of sport. And I don't know, it's something we have to think about a lot around the world is how we grow the sport. And in Australia, it makes a lot of sense because there's a certain model that we're used to. But even New Zealand is a different model once again. I think in Australia, one thing I've sort of come to the conclusion is if you want to play a state cup and you want to form a team or form a club to go to a state cup, well, then New South Wales Touch and Queensland Touch will say to you, well, you have to build a competition in your town. And then once you do that, you're an affiliate, okay? And then once you do that, then you can have a representative team to go to the tournaments. And it actually does benefit us in a way that when you start a club, instantly, instead of thinking of one team to take to a tournament and finding 10 to 14 players to scrape together to just go to a tournament, instantly you have to think outward. You have to think, okay, well, how do I find 30 to 40 people to make a mixed competition so that we can become a club? And then out of that 30, 40 people, we'll hopefully grow the competition and then build a team to go and play representative touch. So it is a benefit that we get in Australia, but that's because that's the culture of the sport that's been running for over 40 years. in Chinatown, I don't know if Jordan or anyone said, but we did start a Monday night league. I think it was called Guangzhou Super Touch League or something, and we ran for about 4 weeks. We had 8 teams enter in 2 divisions, so 4 in the top division and 4 in the second division, which was very much for beginners. In the top division, we had a team of expats, rugby players. We had a team of university students from SCAO, who you'd know, Southern China Agricultural University. Hualong had another team, and I think there was one final team, another team of expats, I think. But I was just trying to see what it was like to introduce touch at night, where people just rock up without really training for the tournament. And I understand the barriers that happen around the world. Like, for instance, I've tried to implement that in Marseille, like tried to get things going. And the first thing the massive barrier that we've hit already is venue availability on a night time. So either cost restraints or you just can't get a venue to start with. So there's a few things like that, for instance, that, like we said, it's very easy for us to come with ideas, but kind of until you're on the ground and until you're modeling it in the country, it's very hard for you to understand, what it's like, what the barriers might be. There's been a little bit of that for me this year, where it's like, okay, well, it's one thing for me to say it, but I'd rather just come here, model it, do it, and then find out what the challenges are. And if it works, then, we can go down that road a bit more.
One thing I noticed in China, and it relates to what you're talking about how it is challenging to get a nighttime weekly social comp started, is in Australia, all of our retail businesses shut at 5 every day. We don't, apart from 1 day a week, we're actually all finishing work, unless you're working in the food industry. You're finishing work at 5 o'clock at the latest every day. So you actually have that time in the afternoon. Whereas when I'm in China, everything's open until 11 o'clock at night. So a lot of, probably more than likely, you're going to be working late. So just the availability of everyone is completely different. If anything, China is probably more chance of getting a morning competition before you start work, because it seems to be like when I went for a walk to go and get a coffee in the morning, nothing was open and there was no one out on the streets. Whereas in Australia, everyone's up quite early, and then at 10 o'clock at night, it's like rush hour. It's like everyone's out on the street, whereas I'm not used to that.
It's interesting as well. Like in New Zealand, for example, they have modules, so they have their competitions, but those generally, or they don't have to be linked to a club. So say Whakatane is their biggest club tournament, and there's others, but Whakatane in January, Whakatane Knockout in January is always their biggest competition. But those clubs are more structured like France, where they don't have to be linked to a competition. And that's different, once again, to the affiliates in Australia.
Yeah, wow.
So it's interesting just how it's all different around the world.
So what?
I mean, just the clubs, what I do think in France, and I do think, because a lot of clubs will train twice a week and then play tournaments maybe 2 times a month, roughly. And I do feel like we could perhaps train once a week, and then the other night is more formal sort of matches with a referee, with a registration base, and maybe you sign up as individuals or you play a little bit more socially, and then you could grow that night of competition for all abilities, where they might not be interested in learning or playing touch or traveling for touch, but they could come and play one night of touch. I know there's barriers to that as well, but I would like to see that explored a bit more.
So, Julien, do you have a club that you are with, or do you go between different clubs? What's your club? What's that called? Because I can flash them up in a photo when you start talking about it.
Okay. I'm a coach of one club which is called Jacou. It's a club next to Montpellier. So I coach for the senior mixed team and for one club.
So you don't play sort of at all anymore? You're just a full-time coach?
No, for my club I can play
Okay.
because and next to Montpellier we have 4 clubs. So there are some clubs for beginners, so it's not easy to play against them because they need to learn touch before playing. Actually, the main problem in France is that you have a lot of rugby clubs, and Federation of Rugby invented a kind of touch. They called it 5 rugby, and it's not easy to build a club and to play touch in France because of this 5 rugby which exist. So we need to work on how can I say that on the visibility of touch in France because of this rugby 5 touch is not known. They call it touch, but it's not like the touch we play. It's a different sport actually.
Yeah, I think we've got something similar in Australia. I'm not even going to say it because I don't want to publicize it or anything like that. But yeah, that sounds annoying. Is it sort of like, is it invented by the rugby community?
Yeah, it's invented by the Federation of Rugby Union.
Yeah, okay. So they try to make it as similar to rugby as they can while ripping off touch football.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I guess to the average person that plays rugby and has never played touch football, you can understand why they'd probably want to play, was it 5-man or something? But they're going to miss out on a whole different set of a whole different skill set of development, especially with like juniors. Do you have how's the junior? Well, how is the juniors looking in France touch football? Is it do you have healthy numbers with the juniors, or is it sort of more? I know, who was I talking to? Thailand said that they don't really start playing touch until they're almost out of high school.
In France, we have a lot of school of touch, but we have 500 young players who play touch in France. So it's a big part of our players, and it's still developing because you have some clubs which are very big with maybe 120 players, and there are maybe 80 young players inside. It's next to Toulon, for example. The School of Touch was the first one, and there are a lot of players in this school. So we need to work on developing this School of Touch, but it's not easy to find some guy to be in charge of this school. So we need to give them some coaching course because it's not easy to discover the sport. They need to be in charge of these players, but in France, the other problem is that touch is not recognized as a sport, so it's not easy to coach touch because of insurance, for example. And we need to find some pitch to play, and it's not easy to find some pitch to play.
Yeah, okay. Well, that would make it very difficult if France don't even recognise it as a sport. Because in Australia, and you'd know this, Mark, we have, especially I can't talk for Queensland. I don't actually know too much about the mechanics of Queensland, but in New South Wales, we have development officers. And you can it's mainly for, we have full-time development officers, but ones that go into school and actually do coaching with the kids at schools are like uni students that are also touch players. They can just get casual sort of money to go into a school and run a clinic. And that's sort of one way that we have of getting our juniors to play what our social touch footy is. But I guess if that's not recognised as a sport, that probably would be very difficult to do.
I would like to school and to teach touch, but because we are not recognized as a sport, I cannot do that. Even if I'm a teacher, I cannot go in a side school because they say, "Oh no, your federation is not recognized by the government, so you cannot do this kind of activity."
That's a shame. Is there a way to apply to get that recognised? If you even know that, yeah.
I would like it, but I don't know this way. Sorry.
It's a shame because we had a good opportunity for touch football to be a part of the Olympics, but they made flag rugby instead, unfortunately.
But if touch football is at the Olympics, maybe they will reconsider our place, I think.
Yeah, okay. Well, fingers crossed.
FIT shared an update internally actually about that, but the process is still underway, and I know they've had some informal chats with the International Olympic Committee. So,
well, that's exciting.
2032 is still a possibility, and they're still exploring.
I'll tell you what, it's a perfect opportunity too, because that's Brisbane, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perfect opportunity to bring in a sport that Australia is probably, I think we're ranked number 1 in the world at the moment. At the moment, I do say that. I'm always going to be going for Australia, but for the last fair few years watching Australia and New Zealand play, New Zealand are definitely nipping at their heels. So it's going to make for a very interesting World Cup, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's important for touch to make a big song and dance about going to the Olympics as well. Like it raises the profile straight away that your sport is on, potentially on the same level as all these well-established sports around the world, that people will learn a lot about us just if we go through that process. And Surf Lifesaving, for example, are bidding for 2032. And from what I've seen in the statistics, there's about 10 times as many people that play touch in Australia as what do surf lifesaving, let alone around the world. And they're still getting Olympians and celebrities to come and support their bid. So I hope touch do a bid, and they do get the likes of, Niall Williams and Nihi Milner-Skudder, World Cup winners, Olympic medalists, your Ryan Papenhuyzens and Charlotte Caslicks to support the bid for the Olympics and sort of explain how much they got from the sport and that they wouldn't be where they are without it. So I think it's important to go through that process. And if the sport does, then all these other countries can be really proud and go to their governments and go to their Olympic committees and say, hey, this is who we are, this is the sport we play, and this is the benefit.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. And I think
sorry, Tommy. At the moment, rugby federations see it as a real threat instead of as something that could help them. People either see it as weak rugby or they see it as a rivalry, and that it could steal their players. Yeah,
I always say to people that I'm yet to see a concussion in touch football. Just out of the nations that I'm talking to about, and they actually promote it as the safe option to that's how they're trying to sort of get the juniors involved, is they promote how safe it is to play touch football as opposed to rugby, especially in the real young ones. And then hopefully that if they're, say, a 9-10-year-old player and they start playing touch before rugby, they really like it. And, kids, once they like something, they don't want to change. So I think that's a thought process behind some of the places that I've spoken to, which I actually think is a pretty good idea.
For sure.
Sorry, ironically, as I'm talking about now, I just had a big thing come into my headphones, and it was a message from our Touch Footy president. Just giving an update, but I'm busy. So, what's next? So, how many more sessions have you got, Julien, before the big World Cup?
I have one tournament in the beginning of June next to Bordeaux, and after my last training camp is 1 week before Touch World Cup.
Awesome. And how is the team looking? Are you happy with their progress?
I think we are a good way to make something at the Touch World Cup. Our main goal is to be the best European team Touch World Cup. So
that's a good goal.
We're working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that you can probably say very proudly too if you do achieve that, and it's got some weight behind that to be the best European team. How So the European champs was at Nottingham. Was it 22?
Yes, in 22. Last year it was in Vichy, France.
Okay. Did you go to the one in Nottingham?
Yes, I went to yeah.
Can you tell us about the venue? Because I've never even been to England. I've probably never been to Europe. I've never even been anywhere in Europe.
Yeah. The venue is very big because you have maybe 12 or 13 pitches at the same place next to university. The accommodations are really very well. It looks like Harry Potter and Hogwarts. So very beautiful. And I think they will welcome us very well. The accommodations are really very good. You will eat correctly, you will sleep correctly, and the pitches are really okay. It's a wonderful grass. You can dive without any problem. So I think it's a very good place for Touch World Cup. It will be the biggest Touch World Cup which happens. So the venue is, I think the venue will be very beautiful for this event.
Yeah, that's good to hear. It's funny you mentioned Harry Potter because I've been talking about how I'm a big James Bond fan, so I've always wanted to visit England because of that. But I do love Harry Potter as well, so that was why I laughed, because that was actually pretty funny. Have you been to England before, Mark?
Yeah, I have, and we were in Nottingham last year during the Atlantic Youth Championships as well.
Of course, yep. So were you at the same venue?
So it was kind of. Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of good timing because it was exactly the same time of year as the World Cup this year. So a big trial run, and Touch Football Australia even sent over some representatives. So yeah, it was cool to see the venue and where most of the athletes will stay. And like Julien said, it's a great town and a great venue for the World Cup.
And how was the weather? Like, if you compare it, this is just for me. What was the weather like?
For Atlantic Touch Cup, it was very cold and very wet.
Ugh. Yeah, that's
it's English weather.
One thing I'm worried about is just potential of rain. I can't see it being overly warm in England, but as far as I know, the middle of the year they get more than average amount of rain.
Yeah, you never know with English weather. I mean, it is going to be summer, so we might have a cracker week and it's sunny all week and maybe too hot, or you could have weather that's like in Australian winter, which is pretty much what we had last year. It was cold and raining and wearing multiple layers on some days. But like Julien said, the fields are great, and the conditions are kind of built for that if it happens.
Very different to Malaysia, basically.
Very.
Tell us a bit about that, Mark, because I actually have a couple of people that comment and ask a bit more about the experience of Malaysia. How did you find that? From what I've heard, and I did mention in one of the chats that I don't know about the 30s, but apparently Traddy was having the men's open team train in like heated rooms.
Yeah, I heard about that as well. I mean, I've never really experienced air being that thick. Like the atmosphere and the moisture, because of the humidity in the air, was just like something out of this planet. So then to have to deal with that, on the ground, and it felt like between 40 to 50 degrees. And obviously they had to stop games at some stages. But then, yeah, the air is thick. There's so much humidity. And then to have to go and play touch was just pretty uncomfortable, to say the least. Australia was extremely well resourced, and once again, they'd done their homework because they had the Youth World Cup the year before. So we had it pretty luxurious in the Australian tent, obviously with air conditioning and ice bars at the venue, and your management, every time you came off the field, were giving you like ice packs to put around your neck and stuff. So there was a lot of that. I think some other countries, Julien might be able to tell us how France had prepared, but I know some countries on a lower budget, were doing it pretty tough. and there was multiple cases of heat stroke and something like that. So not something you're kind of glad you got to experience, but not something you'd recommend or want to do again anytime soon, I think.
How was
Julien, how did France deal with that?
We had air conditioning in our tent. I think we could stay alive thanks to this. Yeah. And we asked the players to come 1 week before Touch World Cup in Malaysia to adapt the weather. We didn't manage to train and to prepare under this heat and this humidity, but we just asked them to take some holidays and come 1 week before to be prepared. And I think thanks to that, we were really adapted to the conditions. So it was okay, but we needed to pay more to be ready to play in Malaysia. I think it won't be the same in England. It will be English
No.
weather. English weather, it's wet. It rains once per day. Yeah, so it will be okay.
I always mention it when England come over to Australia in their summer to play State Cup, how on Friday they're all like, they're pretty white because they just don't get the UV rays that we get. And then on the Sunday, they're just bright red because they're all sunburnt. Been out at touch footy, and then they've probably gone to the beach and just living the dream, but they're just all bright red on Sunday. But yeah, I was watching because it's all on YouTube. Like the World Cup's on YouTube, and then they stop games, and they actually, the commentators talk about 46-degree heat that they're currently playing the gold medal game in, and we have a heat policy here that's about 37 degrees that you stop play. And we've just had our Junior State Cup, which is sort of inland, where it's a lot hotter in Australia, and it hit 37 degrees, and we sort of stopped. And I can't imagine what that would be like, almost 10 degrees hotter, and then the humidity being probably close to 90%. So I don't know how you've played at all, to be honest. It just baffles me how you've got a tournament out of that. Did they play night games at all?
No, not many fields were lit up. But I was thinking, Julien had to coach two teams as well at a World Cup, so running between fields. And we all know how mentally and emotionally exhausting it is to coach one team, let alone in those conditions, running between fields and dealing with everything for two teams. So I'm glad I was just playing, Julien.
Yeah, you didn't. Yes, there's something you don't think about is mentally you just don't get a rest. Like because you're in the sub box as a player, you can choose when to be switched off and sucking them in and stuff like that. But coach is just it's you're exhausted in a totally different way. And the other way that actually makes you exhausted like that is I actually have a sort of an appreciation for the commentators who sit in the box all day and commentate, because I've done that before, and that actually you feel the same way as if you've coached all day. Mm-hmm. So commentary in the Malaysian World Cup would have been an absolute mission. Yeah, well, that's interesting. So I don't think they'll experience that again because it's New Zealand the following World Cup. But just going back to the Olympics, let's say hypothetically, best case scenario, the Olympic Committee or whatever the management is there approved touch football to be in trial in 2032. Do you think the World Cup would turn into the Olympics, or do you think there'd be still a World Cup? Because it would probably end up being in the same year. Probably asking the question.
Yeah, I've got my thoughts. Well, because of COVID, we changed World Cup year this time anyway. So we've had. Was it supposed to
be last year?
Yeah, going on the 4-year principle. And there's been a couple of times. So the first one was in 1988. The second one was in 1991. And then it went to 1995. So there's been a couple of times where Touch World Cup has had to move around. I think a lot of people, my pay grade doesn't equate to having these conversations with the people at TFA and FIT at this stage. But it's interesting thinking about what the format might take on as well. So I think you'd have to change World Cup year, and in an ideal world, you'd sort of go 2 and 2. I think you'd have the World Cup every 2 years and then Olympics 2 years later. But
and that's what swimming do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because swimming do. I think they still have the World Championships in swimming, and they've got the Olympics, but then they've got a lot of nations aren't in the Commonwealth Games, but that's almost treated in Australia like a mini Olympics as well. So I imagine there are athletics that have a World Championships as well.
The other thing to consider at the Olympics is, there would only be opens teams, and
True.
Most likely it wouldn't be men's, women's mixed either.
It'd be men's and women's.
Well, I have an opinion that
actually
just go mixed. You have one team per country, and you put your best players into mixed and build one mixed team.
I think as far as the first time goes, if it was a trial and they wanted to do that, I'd probably be fine with that. But I've just mentioning swimming before, they've actually got the mixed relay now. They have the men's relay, the women's relay, and the mixed relay.
I think it appeals to the IOC having a team sport that is mixed gender as well. It's inclusive, it's unique.
I'm now trying to think of what other Olympic sports do have that, and I don't. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any.
I think curling in the Winter Olympics, and I think maybe mixed tennis if there's mixed doubles at the Olympics.
Possibly, yeah.
But yeah, still no ball sports. Julien, have you had any thoughts about that? What the Olympics could look like, or what that would mean, or what the format could be?
I think if you want to make a good advertisement for our sport, it will be great to have a mixed open team on the Olympics, because I think it's the biggest specialty of our sport is we can play as mixed, and you have to think about tactics and strategy, and it's a different sport between mixed and men's and women, I think. So it would be great to have a mixed open category at the Olympics.
Yeah, and I think a high-level game of touch football, mixed is probably more entertaining to watch if you're an outsider trying to learn about the game. Because men's and women's can be so defense-driven, you might get a game that's it finishes at 3-2, whereas a mixed might finish 9-7. So there's a lot more highlights. There's a lot more promotion of scoring tries and just those things in sport that people are sort of drawn to. I think mixed has more potential to reach the broader audience now that you've put it out there, that mixed probably is the way to go.
Well, that's definitely my opinion. I've heard people pretty high up say that the sport might have to change format and maybe be 4-on-4 to have even less people. Jamie O'Connor came out and said that he doesn't think the format needs to change at all. So it's going to be interesting, those discussions. Why I like mixed as well, while we're trying to grow the sport around the world, is that the requirement for how many players you need to build a quality team comes down. So say you need, depending on how you structure your team, 8 guys and 6 girls, or 9 guys and 5 girls, then instantly the gap between countries closes, because you've got your best of your best in one team. And I just think that would be awesome to see. I think you could see a lot more upsets.
True.
And it'd be interesting to see how players and how coaches go about building their programs for that. So I'd love to see...
all I was just going to say was condensing the range between your top and your bottom team is just going to make it more attractive for as many countries to participate, because obviously the greater your chances of winning is probably going to fuel your motivation to enter a team. So if you've got more chances of winning, why wouldn't you enter a team?
Absolutely. Rugby 7 started at the Commonwealth Games in 1998 and then ended up 18 years later at the Olympic Games. So I would love to see say, an international mixed super series modelled on what a Commonwealth Games or an Olympic Games might look like in the sort of next 3 to 4 years, where it's, 3-4 days, mixed open only. You build a team specifically for this competition. It might not be your mixed open team you take to the World Cup. It's the best mixed open team you can put together from your country. And I mean, the touch, you can imagine, it would be pretty cool to see.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And everyone talks about how fast it is, and people that haven't experienced it before, they just can't explain, because it's like a million things happening in the field at once, and it just, it baffles people really, because you look at rugby, you look at the other ball sports, it's a lot slower.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what else is happening over in? So Mark, you're in France now, are you?
I am, yes.
I never know where you are. I honestly, I never know where you are. I think I was talking to Jordan from China one time. I was like, "Oh, getting Mark involved in the channel or something like that." And he goes, "Oh, is he in Queensland?" I was like, "I don't even know. He's somewhere."
Yeah, I try to keep it that way sometimes, but yeah, like I said, making the most of the opportunities and getting to travel the world and meet people through touch. Last year at the French Men's Open camp, we had a really good night. They gave me a jersey, a playing jersey, and said that I'm the first ever Australian to represent or to be a part of their program, which was a huge honour. And I said, we don't get paid to play this sport. It's not a professional sport, but it gives us so much in the experiences, the friendships, the memories that we do get to build, and that's worth everything. So yeah, for me, just making the most of that, and I really felt a good connection with France. So we'll get through the World Cup and get through this year, and then see what happens. But I do really love it here, and could see myself here for a while. On the weekend, I got to see Julien. For example, we had Touch in Paris, which is one of the best competitions, sort of social / club competitions in Europe, on Saturday, just south of Paris. We had teams from England and Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, let alone France, all there, players from all over the world. Awesome day of touch. You got international players from all over coming, and then Julien's mixed team, for example, we had the Saturday tournament, Touch in Paris. Everyone's got to go to if you're a touch player at some stage. At the party Saturday night, which is a feature of European touch, I must say, the lunch they put on and the dinner they put on, let alone the party, is just amazing. And then Julien had his senior mixed have a training day the next day. I think Germany and Belgium mixed open you might have played against as well, Julien. But that's what's gone on just recently. So that's just an example of the benefits of being able to play touch here, is the travel and stuff you get as well.
Yeah, cool. And the other thing I probably should have mentioned earlier, Julien, you spoke about, was it last year that you said that you were both involved with the girls 18s team?
Yeah, last year, yeah.
Okay, so there's a video on your YouTube channel, Mark. Is that from that team with it's like the dominant touch one?
Yeah,
that was from Julien's under 18s training camp. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I can understand why you can see yourself long term at France, because the conditions there looked amazing. It looked like you were in New Zealand. Everything was just bright green, beautiful day. And I was like, is this where they train in France? That's pretty cool.
Man, I know for you, Julien, that might be normal, but that training camp was in Gif, in the location where we were just on the weekend for Touch in Paris. And you walk from the motel or the hotel we were staying at through this beautiful, quaint, village south of Paris. You're eating brilliant food, and then we get to train on a lovely rugby field like that. So yeah, times like that, you sort of pinch yourself because it's very different to where we come from. I wouldn't say it's always like that, Julien, as well, though. Like sometimes we do get AstroTurf and not good venues. So
AstroTurf. Up until March this year, I'd never seen a touch football game played on artificial or AstroTurf before, and now I'm finding out that it's very common, and it makes sense because just maintaining grass in a big city is just very difficult. So I'm guessing majority of France though is on natural grass.
There
I could be
are a
wrong.
lot of pitch with grass, but we have more and more Astro pitch because it asks less job to
look after.
To mow the lawn. You don't need to mow the lawn, for example. Yeah.
And how have you guys played on the artificial turf before? I never ran on it when I was just coaching, but they gave everyone sort of like compression cloths that you could put on your elbows and knees, so when you dove, you didn't take skin off, and everyone looked like roller skaters that were playing touch because it looked like they had knee and elbow pads on. Have you guys had much experience playing on that?
It's very difficult to dive on an Astro pitch because if you dive, you burn.
Yeah, but does it feel like if you didn't know and you were just running, does it feel different? Does it feel springy?
I think it causes more injuries because you don't have the same feeling with your body and the Astro pitch. And for my all players in mixed 30, for example, when we play on the Astro pitch, I think we create more injuries. So we prefer grass actually to play touch.
Me too.
I'd probably prefer grass as well. Although
there's different qualities. Sorry, there are different qualities as well. And one of the training camp venues for Touch France is in Marcoussis, south of Paris, and it's the home of French rugby. And then they have some really good artificial pitches. And then because soccer / football is so popular around the world, then obviously artificial turf pops up everywhere. But yeah, I explain that to people here as well, that I'd never played any on any artificial turf when I'd grown up in Australia and New Zealand until I left Australia. And then I went to China and my first game of rugby was on AstroTurf. So yeah, rude wake-up call. But once again, one of the differences in Australia that we don't realise that other countries have to put up with or deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And just is the benefit of AstroTurf is if it rains, it holds water better. Can it drain a lot better?
Yeah.
Like, do you ever close the grounds because of weather as much?
If it rains a lot, I think it's better to play on Astros because you don't have any water on the pitch, and you don't slide, so it's easier to play.
Yeah, okay. Because just at home at the moment, we've had just weeks of rain, and I think Central Coast just opened their fields up for the first time in a few weeks for social, and it pissed down rain while they were playing social, and everywhere's just been closed. So we haven't been able to really do much. We've been playing at our association, but it's been real not nice. So I guess this is one time I'm like, if we had AstroTurf, we'd be fine.
I think it is slowly starting to come in Australia as well. Like some really high quality grade rugby grounds in Sydney are AstroTurf, and then obviously, like Julien said, the maintenance and the cost to water fields because they do look after their grass really well here as well. So it cuts down cost.
Yeah, cool. Right. So is there anything else that you'd like to chat about? I've kind of run out of ideas. We've sort of covered everything pretty to the point.
Well, Julien, I'd like to hear And it's so cool that you could be on this chat, someone that's been a part of Touch France for, most of the sport's existence here. And you've introduced a lot of evolution to the sport here. So through the next World Cup cycle, where do you see Touch France heading? Do you see any certain opportunities, or do you see the sport growing, or where do you see Touch France being in the next 4 years through this next World Cup cycle?
Good question.
You mean after this Touch World Cup, or Touch New Zealand Touch World Cup, you mean?
Yeah, like not only performance-wise for the higher teams, but participation-wise as well.
You mean participation of the players in the for Touch World Cup for high performance?
Not only that, but also what will touch look like in the next 4 years in France? How can the sport grow? Will you increase participation at grassroots as well? What's your vision for the sport?
I think this World Cup in Nottingham will be the end of one cycle, because there are a lot of players who were at the beginning of the sport in France. I mean, they played for France for maybe 10 years or 15 years, and they need to rest because they gave a lot of energy to the sport. And maybe they will not play anymore, but they will give their experience to the players, and maybe it will recreate another rhythm of progression. We have one. Thibaut is one player who really in charge of Touch France, and is working on our growth. And I think we will give more importance to young people. And I think the future of Touch France is new players and the young players. And it will be another cycle, another way we will grow, because they will bring another way to play, because they will play with only touch, because the old players played rugby before, they played basketball before, they play other sports, and they'll have to learn touch with their own experience. And thanks to these young players, I think we will grow with only touch players, and we will recreate really a good level of players thanks to this touch experience. I think just after the Touch World Cup, there will be maybe a decrease of our number of members. But after that, after this decrease, we will. Thibaut is working on it. We will manage to grow and increase our level and our number of members, but it won't be easy, because as we said, we are not recognized as a sport, and in France it's very important to be recognized as a sport, because thanks to that we can have some pitches to play. If you are not a sport, it's not easy to go and see the government and tell we need a pitch to play. And when we will manage to become a sport, and Thibaut is working on that, I think it will be easier to be recognized and to be able to go to school to teach them how we can play touch, because you told that, Tom, it's a safe sport, so we can start playing rugby thanks to touch. And if we manage to reach this goal of being an introduced to rugby, it will be easy to develop in France, I think.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And Julien, just to add to that, it's a closing of a cycle for you as well.
I think it's the end of my senior mixed experience. But after Touch World Cup, I don't know really what I'm going to do. Maybe I have some proposals.
Ooh. Surely you got to be involved in the World Cup in New Zealand. You don't want to miss that one. I can see that being such a good World Cup. It's just a great country, New Zealand. All right.
I think it would be great to go to New Zealand for Touch World Cup, because it's the other side of the world, and it would be great. But life can change very.
Yes. All this actually can be for both of you. One thing I get everyone to tell us who their favorite players are. Do you have a favorite player that you like watching in a favorite team, like just from watching on YouTube? I've got to, I can write down, Mark, I'm going to write down who I think you're going to say. So, Julien, do you want to go first?
I like Danny Davis because she came in France in 2018 and she brought a lot of experience. She changed our way to defend, and it was really awesome to have her. And she was very professional. She was very clear in everything she explained. So I would like to see Danny Davis and touch World Cup. Danny Norman now.
Danny Norman, of course. Yeah. Is she playing? I'm not sure. She is, isn't she?
Yeah. Coming back from a baby, yeah.
Yeah, wow. No, that's awesome. What about you,
Tom? It depends on the criteria for
right.
me.
Like right now, like who? If you just wanted to watch some touch highlights, if you had to pick the highlights of one person, who do you go to? Like right now, the way you're feeling right now, or if you wanted to show someone in France, hey, check this guy or girl out, who do you show them?
Oh man, I feel like I have to be careful with my answer a little bit.
People, I'm sure you're not going to offend. I actually like name dropping people if it's in a positive way, I guess.
Okay. Well, I do have really strong thoughts on all this. Look, Sam Brisby, I'm going to throw that one out because not many people, he needs more attention and more credit than what he gets.
Oh, I was like, which? I was about to say which one.
Yeah.
Samuel.
So the husband of Samantha Rogers, obviously. Look, Sam Brisby, his career was cut short. There's XL highlights released a highlight video of him around 10 years ago. He had the craziest right foot step, and I think he was the funnest player to watch at the time. Knee injuries cut him short, but I think he would have taken over the title as the best player of the world if he got to reach his prime.
It's funny you mentioned Sam Brisby. So I actually had the top 20 players from 2010 to current, which was last year. And I put him on there. He was number 14. And I have a lot of memories with Sam Brisby. We're the same age. So playing Junior State Cup, if we were playing Manly, we were playing Sam Brisby. Yeah. If we were playing West, we were playing Jordan Marshall King. That was it.
Yeah.
Okay, that was our two biggest fears going up every state cup. It was either Sam Brisby or Jordan Marshall King. You were going to play one of them. And if it was Jordan Marshall King, you were going to get probably a left foot, and Sam Brisby, right foot. It was just, you just couldn't man on with them. They would just, their agility was just insane. So I actually do think and it's a shame that his injury caused him to retire, and someone else like in the same boat, sort of Scott Bundy, could have went on and done very big things in touch football as well, but just injuries just sort of got the better of him, I guess. Anyone else? Yeah. That wasn't who I wrote down, but I'm glad you mentioned Sam, because he's a very nice guy, and I think he does. Does he do photography of touch footy or something like that? Or
he's obviously still around, does a bit of coaching still as well, and he's a great guy, and that's why I like to say him, because he's one of my favourite all-time players to watch, and more people, whoever's watching this, need to go and make sure they know who he is and get to see how he played. It was amazing. I reckon on the sheet you've written down Chris Lennon.
I don't know. You can see. Hang on, I'll turn this light off.
Yeah, no, I can see it. Yeah. So Chris O is definitely up there as well. Obviously from the same club. Been lucky enough to see him play for over a decade, since he was 8-9 years old. And excited to see him play at his first ever World Cup. Pretty proud to say that there's 3 boys that won a state cup and a national title in Opens this recent summer in Australia. and Josh Moffat, out of those three boys, is the only one not going to the World Cup, which is interesting. But yeah, Chris has to be one of the best attacking players in the world right now, if not the best attacking player in the world right now.
Yeah, I think as far as what he can do on the field, not very few other people can do it. I think and the only thing that is going to make him better as he grows, especially with this World Cup, is just consistently doing it game in, game out. We can see, like, you could pull a highlight reel of Chris Lennon, it's going to look amazing, but yeah, as he gets older, he's going to be able to do that very consistently. So if I had to pick a top 5 players currently, I'd probably have him definitely in the top 5, probably in the top 3 as well. Yeah, I rate Chris Lennon, and he's a very, very respectable young kid as well.
Yeah.
And you should watch on Mail in France, for example, too.
Was it Mark? You were telling me about one of the French players that you showed me his highlight reel, and I can't remember his name just because it's not a name that would stick into my head. But you definitely sent forward to me a video.
Yeah, Julien just mentioned him. Go on, Julien.
His name is Maël Pain.
Maël Pain, yeah. Okay, so yes, I did see that video, and yeah, very. Is he playing men's or mixed?
Mixed open.
And did he play in your Sharks side?
He played in Malaysia in 2019 in mixed open as well. He playing for me in under 18 mixed, and now he's part of mixed open team. Yeah.
Okay, Mark, did he play in your South Queensland side? So I remember you told him.
He ended up going back to it. He couldn't stick around until NTL, so he played Queensland State Cup, New South Wales State Cup, and then went home after. I played Whakatane in New Zealand, but didn't play NTL. No.
Yeah. Okay. Did he play in your Div 1 team at State Cup?
For Central Coast, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. How'd you guys go? Because I remember we came up. I think we were on the field after you, like the same field after you, and you were buggered. You were just absolutely buggered, and you turned around. You're like, "Hey, Tom." I don't know if you won or lost. You were definitely buggered.
That sounds like me after every game I play now. We didn't go as well as what we should have. I'll say that. And the 2 European boys that we had in our team, it was awesome for them to experience. So they came over to develop and got a lot out of it, and sort of saw how the game is very different over there. But yeah, Maël, when you think about a guy like Chris, who is fast, can pass, can dive, and has good vision, sort of those kind of components, there's not too many players in the world that can do all of those. And Maël from France, like he'd be one of the fastest players going to this World Cup, and he has a lot of those attributes as well. So he's exciting to watch.
Wouldn't it be nice if they had the dash for cash or some format of that at the World Cup? It's one player from each nation, just a foot race, a 70-meter foot race.
Wonder who would win it.
I have no idea. I don't even know.
Exactly what we needed.
I don't need. Yeah. Oh, but the thing is, someone from anywhere could win it. Like, imagine if Jamaica had a team. Do they have a team?
Exactly.
I actually don't even know.
Not this time, no.
Fiji would be. Surely they'd be favourites.
Yeah.
You could pick anyone from Fiji, and they'd just run like the wind. Right. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. What about team, Julien? Do you watch any teams in Australia or New Zealand, or what was the Samoa? I think won a tournament. Oh, the Pacific Games or something like that.
We don't watch a lot of games. Sorry.
Oh, you don't?
Actually, we watch.
That's all right.
We often watch Trans Tasman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good ones. And And Touch Football, they've recently just put up the full games of the Trans-Tasman last year, and the youth ones as well. They're actually all on YouTube now, so that's good, especially when you're looking for content.
Yeah.
Righto, guys, but we might have to call it there. What time is it over in France? It'd be about 1:30 now, would it?
1:35. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. But hey, look, thanks very much for coming on the channel, Julien. I know it's a bit of in the middle of the day, it's a bit of an awkward time for you, but there's a fairly big difference, so it was a bit limited on when we can actually get a good chat out. And thanks again, Mark. Really appreciate you being on the channel again.
No, thanks, Tommy. Thanks for having me and talking about Touch France, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, I will. It's funny. Tiv from Seventh Touch reached out, and we were talking about the possibility of doing a chat like this with all the Touch Footy YouTubers. So that counts as Unleashed is technically would be on the invitation list there. So I think that could be a lot of fun.
Let's do it. That sounds good. And watch the space. I need to get more stuff on YouTube. So that's one thing. You know, so much of our education is handed down through touch, face to face, hand to hand, and what you're doing, the education resource that you're putting out, has never been done in touch. So it's inspiring me and inspiring a lot of other people and educating us all. So it's good, man. Thank you.
No, not a problem. It's an absolute pleasure. And Julien, I'll come and introduce myself, and I'll see you at the World Cup, and we can officially meet then.
Okay, no problem. I will be there.
I'll make sure I'll be there. I'll be watching your game against England.
Okay. Not only this one, all the games will be great, you know.
Yes, I'll just have my popcorn, and I'll sit back and I'll just watch the entertainment. I'm sure any game you pull up and watch is going to be very entertaining. But anyway, guys, thanks very much for joining me, and we'll see you at the World Cup.
Thank you. See you.
Cheers, boys.